Welcome to Reclaiming the Republic. This show is sponsored by reclaimingtherepublic.org. I am G.R. Mobley. This is an educational grassroots program focused on uniting and leading in restoring the Republic and placing the federal government back into the scope and framework of the Constitution once again. And welcome back. We are actually out and past the Bill of Rights and out into the last stretch of the final amendments from 11 to 27. And so let's get through the obligatories and we can get through these remaining. The next one that we'll really focus on will be the 14th. And actually we'll focus on a few of these just for the purpose of the relevance that the framers had placed, that when you make minor changes to the Constitution, it requires, if you're not going to follow the process in one small, minute way, it requires an amendment, which means the militia, all of these different, the Electoral College, all of these changes that are no longer aligned with the Constitution are unconstitutional. And the framers actually laid that precedence down, that you had to change the Constitution via the Article 5 process. And I believe that most people are reasonable in what those changes are to be, but I don't believe the people would have ever surrendered their electors in choosing the president to the party system, especially as we now understand and see the party system. But anyway, the show is also sponsored by RepublicReview.org, and you are listening to the only show that provides you the academic evidence and the academic evidence-based solutions. We highly recommend that you, if you're looking for hardwood, solid hardwood furniture, and or furnishings for your home, for your entertainment center, for books or what have you, check out Timber Nation, timbernation.com. And they actually ship for free. It's RTA, ready-to-assemble type of stock. The We the People calendar, check them out. And we also recommend that you take a look into the radiodustcovers.com if you want to protect some of your stuff, some of your equipment, especially if you've paid good money for it. And don't forget to check out Ad Local. We already have Ad Local promos. We'll start getting Timber Nation and these other ones. It's just I'm way too busy this time of year, and I need more help. I need more help. And the only reason I can't get to things is because some of you aren't helping. And the fact of the matter is, if you're not really engaged in helping, then you're a part of the problem. That's right. So I'm accusing my listening audience. You need to start doing some stuff. Are you really going to accept all this crap in the news cycle? All of these things that are pouring down. I'll tell you what, you just continue watching the news cycle. Just keep watching that pornography, and that'll fix it, right? Because that's what's been fixing it for the past 50 years. People watching and learning and seeing how bad things are getting. That's really helped, hasn't it? Yeah, okay. So help me out. And if you don't know how, send me an email, info@reclaimingtherepublic.org. And we will be happy to get you started, because you probably live in a state that could utilize and benefit from a First Amendment petition drive to getting rid of your governor and getting rid of your county commissioners and so forth. Give us a call. We're here to help, and we're not from the government. I hope Harry's listening, and we have a comment line, 425-270-5416. So, as I was saying in the last episode, the 11th Amendment is a change to the jurisdiction of the judicial power under Article 3. And this was proposed in 1794, and it was ratified in 1798. The judicial power of the United States shall not be construed to extend to any suit in law or equity commenced or prosecuted against one of the United States by citizens of another state, or by citizens or subjects of any foreign state. In other words, the judicial power of the United States, the U.S. Supreme Court, or the federal court system shall not be construed to extend its jurisdiction to any suit in law or equity commenced or prosecuted against one of the United States by citizens of another state, or by citizens or subjects of any foreign state. Now, this is being violated, and some people claim that the 14th Amendment has helped on this in violating this, but I can tell you that when you look at some of the lawsuits and some of these things that have been prosecuted, if you just look at Mayberry v. Madison, which I think is an 1801 case, the federal court reached into a case that was a state issue. It was resolved by the state, and Mayberry v. Madison, who was a judge that was basically trying to fight Madison's basically dismissal of his appointment to becoming a judge under the midnight judges appointments, and some of them actually got dismissed. But Marshall picked this one up, and he reached down unconstitutionally, violating this very amendment. And so, as we look at how the federal court system is extending its jurisdiction into so many different things, this right here was the amendment to keep them from extending that jurisdiction. And actually, this was almost like a firewall against judicial review. Anyway, the 12th Amendment. Okay, now, we've already gone through the Electors Clause, right? And we've kind of covered this again. But what I want to do is I want you to understand the real change that occurred is in how these people voted, how the electors were to vote. In the previous process, if we go to Article 2 and we talk about the numbers of votes, let me see here. And shall make a list of the persons voted for let me see here. Let's get down to the majority and how the House of Representatives. Then 5 of the highest list. Hold on here. Just hold on a quick second, because what I want to do is I want to actually find how their ballot. It's right here at the very beginning. The electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for 2 persons, of whom one at least shall not be an inhabitant of the same state with themselves, and they shall make a list of all the persons voted for. So, in this amendment, the only thing that they're really changing is how long they have to go in voting for and having the Electoral College continue to vote, because they've changed that to allow Congress to step in. And Congress, after a few times, if the Electoral College can't come up with a majority, then Congress will step in. And they will actually choose the president. Congress will choose the president in the 12th Amendment. So here's the real change, though. The electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for president and vice president. In other words, instead of voting for 2 and then they count who had the most amount of votes, and then whoever had the most amount of votes became president. Now the electors are to actually choose who is to be president and who is to be vice president, and one of whom at least shall not be an inhabitant of the same state with themselves. They shall name in their ballots the person voted for as president, and in distinct ballots the person voted for as vice president. So this is the change of the 12th Amendment. Now, if they're going to have primaries and eliminate a field of presidents and candidates, that should be in here, but it's not, because this is a very minute change. It's a minute change of basically, instead of voting for 2 people and they working it out, they actually define who is to be president, who is to be vice president. And then it moves forward. And they shall make distinct lists of all persons voted for as president and all persons voted for as vice presidents, and the number of votes for each, which lists they shall sign and certify and transmit sealed to the seat of government, to D.C., of the United States, directed to the President of the Senate. The President of the Senate shall, in the presence of the Senate and House of Representatives, open all the certificates, which is the current Vice President, and the certificates and the votes shall be then counted. The person having the greatest number of votes for President shall be the President, if such number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed. In other words, we need 270. And if no person such majority, then from the persons having the highest numbers, not exceeding 3 on the list, those voted for as president, the House of Representatives shall choose immediately by ballot the president. So in other words, it doesn't even go back to the Electoral College. So this is another minor change. And this is not what happened. This is not what happened on January 6th. But in choosing the president, the vote shall be taken by the states, and the representation from each state having one vote, a quorum for his purpose shall consist of a member or members of 2/3 of the states. So in other words, the states will actually get one vote in the House of Representatives for choosing the president. And a majority of all the states shall be necessary to a choice. In other words, you have to have at least 26 votes out of 50 to give you a clear majority. And if the House of Representatives shall not choose a president whenever the right of choice shall devolve upon them before the 4th day of March next following, then the vice president shall act as president as in the case of the death or other constitutional disability of the president. The person having the greatest number of votes as vice president shall be the vice president if such number be a majority, if the whole number of electors appointed, and we'll get back into this. We'll start off with the persons having the greatest number of votes for vice president, so I'll know exactly where we left off. So, as you can see, they made minor changes. It was significant in the selection process, so it wouldn't continually go and go and go and go. But if we look at today with the way the party controls it, that is not representative by what we have today in the 12th Amendment. We'll be right back after this. Folks, as you know, online fraud is on the rise, and it's more important than ever for your new and existing customers to be able to determine whether they are using a website with a secured connection. If you didn't know, Google mandated in 2017 that all data submitted to its linked websites must be secure with SSL certificates. Without SSL certificates, your site is listed by Google as not secure. In other words, without these certificates, your site will be harder to find, and this will impact new traffic and ultimately your revenue. Whether you're a blogger or in e-commerce, AdLocal will help protect your website from all forms of data breaches, phishing scams, and build a secure environment for your businesses, big or small. Contact AdLocal by calling 866-88-ADLOCAL or visit them on the web at www.adlocal.com for custom pricing. If you've listened to my show, Reclaiming the Republic, then you should understand that the Constitution is neither a living document nor a noble guide to governance. In accordance to Article 7, the Constitution is a hard, fast contract, and the states are the only stakeholders in this contract. Integral in contract law, the stakeholders or states possess the inherent authority to exercise oversight and enforcement over their contract. This means they can audit the federal government by the contract, and with Republic Review, they can enforce compliance to their Constitution. Any single state can perform the audit, but when states begin to unite in the auditing process, this is what is referred to as Republic Review. Please read my argument for Republic Review as well as my description of the Republic Review model on reclaimingtherepublic.org. We even have a graphic flowchart that shows you how Republic Review works. If you want to learn more, contact me on Facebook or send me an email. Thank you. Friends, if you have any questions or comments, we have our 24-hour comment line at 425-270-5416. And here we go. Now, how they split up for the vice president, the person having the greatest number of votes as vice president shall be the vice president. If such number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed, and if no person having a majority, then from the two highest numbers on the list, the Senate shall choose the vice president out of that two, not out of the entire field. A quorum for the purpose shall consist of 2/3 of the whole number of the senators. So in other words, they have to have 2/3 of the Senate present to do this. And there's no reason why they wouldn't be there. If you believe you me, there's always 100% participation when it comes down to the Electoral College. And a majority of the whole number shall be necessary to a choice. So in other words, they actually have to have a clear majority. But no person constitutionally ineligible to the office of president shall be eligible to that of vice president of the United States. This is where Kamala Harris, or communist a la Harris, is violating, and she is not capable or eligible to be the vice president. Anyway, so the next one is what we call the 13th Amendment, which is actually a title of nobility amendment. We've talked about this before, but this one has been was ratified, but there have been challenges. And actually, I think that what ended up happening was the government and the lawyers put this aside because they said, this is going to affect us as it was proposed and as it was defined. This was proposed in 1810 and ratified in 1819. If any citizen of the United States shall accept, claim, receive, or retain any title of nobility or honor, or shall, without the consent of Congress, accept and retain any present, pension, office, or emolument of any kind whatever from the emperor, king, prince, or foreign power, such person shall cease to be a citizen of the United States and shall be incapable of holding any office of trust or profit under them or either of them. And so this basically points to, and if you understand the bar and the lawyers, the bar actually, and go do the research on this, the bar takes you back to England as a title of nobility. Now, the unratified 13th Amendment that was proposed by Lincoln, because again, this was the first amendment regarding slavery that was rejected by the states. No amendment shall be made to the Constitution which will authorize or give to Congress the power to abolish or interfere within any state with the domestic institutions thereof, including that of persons held to labor or service in the laws of the said states. Now, this was signed by President Lincoln, which is something you don't do. Let's just put it that way. When you look at the amendment process, it goes from the House to the Senate, or vice versa. It doesn't matter, but both houses have to actually ratify or approve of the amendment by 2/3 majority. And so when that is done, then it actually goes out to an office. I forget the name of the office, but it goes to an office under Congress that will actually transmit that amendment. But the president gets a copy as a courtesy copy that goes out to all of the states. And then the states, and in that amendment, it defines how the states are to ratify it, whether they do it by the legislature or by convention of delegates, like this U.S. Constitution was done. And so what we're trying to do, and we're trying to help you understand that this whole process of, this amendment process, when Lincoln signed this, it was ultimately a gesture like an olive branch to the southern states, so that they, would look at this as, wow, I mean, this is a real accommodation that they're offering here. And I just want to be clear that this offering was unconstitutional, and it would have further violated the Declaration of Independence and the laws of nature and nature's God. And so here is the unratified 13th Amendment. No amendment shall be made to the Constitution which will authorize or give to Congress the power to abolish or interfere with any state with the domestic institutions thereof, including that of persons held to labor or service by the laws of the said state. In other words, this would have basically galvanized that no amendment to the Constitution could be made that would allow the abolishment of slavery, that states would be guaranteed their right of slavery. Remember, I've talked about this before. If you actually go to the Avalon Project, you can actually look at how the Confederate States had actually, in their secession letters, the first thing they brought up was slavery, that they were leaving the Union because of slavery, because they recognized that the Union had turned so bitter towards slavery that these few states that were not going to be willing to give up slavery. They said, we better leave now before it's too late. And they actually had the constitutional standing to actually leave. What should have happened was Lincoln should have used the Manifest Destiny, he should have used the Monroe Doctrine to say, we're abolishing slavery in the Western Hemisphere because we believe it's an institution that is a scourge on society, and we're going to start with the southern states. Had that happened, then the northern states would have gladly and cheerfully joined in this war. But what had ended up happening was Lincoln just said, we're not going to let you leave, and it's all about economics and so forth. He never made it about slavery until the Emancipation Proclamation and then the real 13th Amendment, which actually, ended it. But the Emancipation Proclamation was halfway through the Civil War, and the North did not win one battle. Not one. Not until the Emancipation Proclamation and when Lincoln made this about slavery, that's when they started winning. Had he made this about slavery, then I'm telling you, my friends, it would have been done. They would have been able to win this war a lot quicker with a lot less bloodshed. Anyway, the 13th Amendment proposed in 1865, ratified in 1865. Now, you got to remember that it was not ratified by the southern states. It was ratified by the northern states because they were the ones that were in the Union. And just like the 14th Amendment, see, people talk about, the southern states, had to ratify it under duress. Well, they didn't ratify the 13th either. But they had to ratify all amendments in the Constitution in coming back into the Union. That was, I think, the smartest sleight of hand that they could have played because they were right. They seceded, and that's why there was no representation. I challenge you, go look at who was represented in Congress. Go to Wikipedia. It'll show you that the seats of Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, all these seats were vacant. They were not there. They left the Union. And so as such, they left the Union for this secession that the only way they could come back in was for Congress to allow them to come back in. And that's why the 14th Amendment was first ratified before they started allowing the southern states to come back in. Because, again, you got to remember, 1866, they passed a Civil Rights Act that would have enabled and protected the freemen. But Congress understood, and even though Andrew Johnson, vetoed it, they still got 2/3 majority of both houses to overrule Johnson's veto, and they still enacted the Civil Rights Act. But they quickly realized, and before that ink was even dry, within weeks, they started working on the 14th Amendment, and before the end, I think it was in June, before the session ended, they were capable and able to actually finish, complete, and pass by 2/3 both houses the 14th Amendment. So when you read all of the negative stuff that comes out of Congress, out of the Congressional Globe, of the evils of the 14th Amendment, you got to remember that all of that was rejected because it actually passed. They didn't accept that. They didn't accept how they were redefining the 14th Amendment. And as those who argued for it, they were actually creating the terms and conditions for the 14th Amendment. Section 3 is probably the most important part of the 14th Amendment today, along with Section 1, Clause 2, what we've been talking about, that states cannot make any law or enforce any law that abridges the individual privileges and immunities of the U.S. citizens. In other words, your individual liberties that are guaranteed by the Constitution. So, this is the 13th Amendment. Section 1, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude. So this is a complete change. neither slavery or involuntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime whereof the party shall be duly convicted, shall exist within the United States, or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Section 2. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Article 14 is coming up next, the 14th Amendment, so we'll be right back after these two promos. Hang on. The reason progressives are effective in instituting their policies is because they are united ideologically, financially, and socially. In addition, almost every billionaire in the world is funding a vast array of different groups, and these groups' efforts are to undermine our republic and our Constitution. If you don't believe me, just Google donors to the Open Society Foundations. The only way we're going to successfully combat these efforts and take back our liberties, like our education system, healthcare, state lands, housing, labor, and many other roles, responsibilities, and powers that belong to the states, is by you and I and local businesses getting involved in supporting political programs and efforts based on constitutional principles. The best way to do this is supporting result-oriented organizations designed to take back our lost liberties. The ultimate result-oriented effort is Republic Review, so please consider contributing to this show and the organizations and activities that we are supporting by going to reclaimingtherepublic.org and go to the contributions page, and you can become a listed supporter of liberty. To become a citizen, one must take an oath to support and defend the Constitution. Those of us who are naturally born citizens are obligated and duty-bound to fulfill the same oath, even though we're not required to take it, because it is implied upon us at birth. This is why I cannot emphasize enough the importance in supporting businesses who are supporting our Constitution. We have to stop supporting businesses that have chosen to hide behind political correctness, and obviously we must stop supporting progressive businesses who are working to undermine our republic and our Constitution. Do not let businesses or organizations convince you that they are supporting the Constitution by supporting protests for social justice. By definition, social justice is the distribution of wealth, opportunities, and privileges within a society. In other words, they're calling for socialism, which is incompatible with individual liberty and individual sovereignty and our Constitution. With that, please consider supporting businesses who advertise on this show and this radio station. Don't forget, you can call our 24-hour comment line to ask a question or to speak on any topic. Dial 425-270-5416. Okay, so now the 14th Amendment. And I just want to let you know, I've got a very special supplement regarding the 14th Amendment, because I want you to understand what really happened back then. Because, and sadly, because history has become so perverted, I do not believe there are very many people that understood the significance of the 14th Amendment. It wasn't just about ending slavery, but the 14th Amendment actually, because of the freemen and the plight of the freemen, the states, as the northern states, as well as the federal government, agreed that the states couldn't be trusted to regulate and govern their own people. So the northern states willingly took upon them the Bill of Rights and the protections of the privileges and immunities of U.S. citizens to be applied to the states. This is significant. This is huge. And so what we want to do is we want to give you some better context to this. But we'll do that when we're done reading the 14th Amendment, because it'll probably take up, it might actually take up the entire show. Let me see. This is how many pages? It's 3 pages. And this is an extract from Professor Kurt Lash. Anyway, proposed in 1866 and ratified in I think it was ratified in 1867, 68. I think when they hit the northern states, and in this particular in this particular copy, or I say if you start looking at certain southern states, because the Constitution Society, the copy that I have, and it's verbatim, word for word, it's all right, but the little bias that they put here, under duress, that the southern states under duress were forced. Well, if you want to join the Union, if you want to be a part of the Union, you actually have to accept the Constitution and all of its ratified amendments. You can't come in with your fingers behind your back and say, yeah, we'll honor all of them except these. No, you have to honor all of because the Constitution and its amendments are the supreme law of the land. Now, the problem is we've got all sorts of things that they're doing that they have no business doing that we actually have to stop. We have to man up, cowboy up, whatever you want to call it, and get it done. Get them back into the framework of the Constitution. So here it is. Section 1, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. There's the big qualifier. And subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. So this creates it maintains the citizenship of the state, and it also it creates this citizenship a la carte for anybody that's lived within the United States but has not been considered a citizen, because slaves were not considered citizens by the Dred Scott case. The Supreme Court erred in making that decision, and this amendment actually corrected that. This part of the amendment went out and actually corrected that, because the Dred Scott case basically said blacks could not be citizens and they can't vote, and therefore Dred Scott is going to be left in slavery. And he ended up escaping and going to the North where he had his freedom. And this was all possible because he was in Missouri, where the majority of the people in Missouri didn't want slavery. The few people that wanted slavery were those who had the money, that bought government and controlled government the best they could. But when you have so many people that are anti-slavery in Missouri, because remember, Dred Scott was a free man based on a 12-man jury in Missouri. They actually freed him. It took the Supreme Court to relegate him back into slavery. Anyway, this is the big part that I've been reading quite a bit. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of the citizens of the United States. And I want to be clear, this has been trampled on big time over COVID. It is marked red. And also, you'll find that this the citizenship part, the very first part, is marked red as well. Why? Because anchor babies are not included in this, because, as I said, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. A baby that is born of foreign citizens, like Kamala Harris, is not subject to the United States. Therefore, she cannot be considered a U.S. citizen because her parents were not subject to the United States. Now, on the other hand, black folks were. And at that time, slaves were, because slaves were actually under the jurisdiction of the Constitution. They were recognized as for apportionments and other things. So you can't say that, that didn't apply to blacks. It absolutely did, especially the slaves. And this is how they became U.S. citizens, like that. Just that simple. Nor shall any, and this is, to me, I think is just redundant, and I just don't think it is necessary to this part. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protections of the laws. Now, when they say persons, any person within its jurisdiction, that has to mean citizens, because citizens fall under the jurisdiction of government. If you're a foreign citizen, you do not. But this has been misinterpreted in itself as having to apply citizenship and the protections to illegal aliens and other people, that they have the same rights as U.S. citizens, when actually they don't, because they're not under the jurisdiction. If an alien is looking for benefits or anything else, they should be sent back to their home country, because that's where they should be because that's whose jurisdiction they're under. They're not under ours. So all of Section 1 is red. Section 2 coming up, you're going to find that this in itself is red. Representatives shall be apportioned among the several states according to their respective numbers, counting the whole number of persons of each state, excluding Indians not taxed. So those Indians who were taxed were included. In other words, if they were participating in business and exchanging and taxing, then they were considered a part of the citizenry. They were considered U.S. citizens and state citizens. But when the right to vote at any election for the choice of electors for President and Vice President of the United States, representatives in Congress, the executive and judicial officers of a state, or the members of the legislature thereof, is denied to any of the male inhabitants, or let's just change this, because this means that all people can vote now. So this means that all inhabitants of such states being 21 years of age and citizens of the United States, there it is right there, they have to be citizens of the United States or in any way abridged except for the participation in rebellion or other crimes. So in other words, if they commit a crime or they've rebelled against the Constitution, then they don't count for representation, because it says right here, the basis of representation therein shall be reduced in the proportion which the number of such citizens shall bear to the whole number of citizens 21 years of age in such state. So what Section 2 does is it says, if you have a lot of people living in your state and many of them are not citizens, that means they can't vote. That means they don't get representation. They can't obtain representation. They're not qualified because you have to be a citizen as it's stated. And that is the key word. So when you look at all the illegal aliens in California, California should have been reduced even more significantly, because they have 11 representatives. There's probably even more than that now. Texas is the same way. And a lot of these states that have all of these illegal aliens that are residing there, if you want to call them inhabitants, they're residing there and they're bilking us for benefits and what have you. Right, wrong, or indifferent, they're invaders, and they should have no access to these privileges of a citizen, nor should they have any protections as it has been stated in Section 1 and Section 2. Therefore, those states cannot count them for apportionment. What would happen if all of a sudden the states that didn't have lots of illegal aliens, Wyoming actually might get 2? They only have 500,000, but when you have 40 million illegal aliens, and actually that's probably more than that now, we're probably working up to a clip of 50 million by the time that we get to midterm for Biden, because look at how many people are coming in that they're able to count. This does not include those that get past the wire without being counted. We may have 50 million, which means that the United States population may actually hit to, 330, but that means that we only have 280,000 U.S. citizens. It boggles the mind of why we're not addressing this invasion as an invasion, because the Constitution clearly, as we covered this before, clearly must handle it that way. Now, here's my favorite part of the 14th Amendment. No person shall be a senator, and we ran out of time here. So when we come back from this break, we will cover number 3, Section 3, Section 4, and it looks like we'll probably get through Section 3, 4, and 5 in this next segment, and then we might be able to start the Kurt Lash summary and some details regarding the ratification of the 14th Amendment after these two promos. Thank you so much. If you run a business or an organization, you already know email is an essential tool for communicating. If you're interested in reducing your overhead and increasing your productivity, I personally recommend you look into AdLocal email marketing services. AdLocal has a special offer for my listeners with email services that start at $10 a month for your first 1,000 addresses. If you want to increase customer retention, grow your market presence, track your statistics, and improve your engagement with your customers with modern, elegant emails that express the personality of your business with emails that integrate with your website, you need to contact AdLocal, and they handle the rest. Take it from me. AdLocal offers the best solutions for all organization sizes, and they lead with their pricing and the 24-hour customer service. Folks, it's time to call AdLocal at 866-88-ADLOCAL or visit them on the web at www.adlocal.com. To set the record straight, Republic Review is neither an Article 5 convention nor a convention of states. In accordance with Article 5 of the Constitution, this convention requires 2/3 of the states to apply to Congress to convene a convention with the intent to amend the Constitution. This convention is unable to solve our real problem, which is non-compliance to the Constitution, and would be dangerous to convene at this time. In contrast, Republic Review is the process of the states exerting its constitutional authority over the Constitution. An audit does not require an application to Congress. This authority is inherent to principal stakeholders of a contract. Why do we need Republic Review? Because this is the only way the states can deal with the federal encroachments into roles, responsibilities, and powers that belong to the states. To learn more about Republic Review, please go to reclaimingtherepublic.org to read my content and my model on the audit and Republic Review process. As a reminder, if you have any questions or comments, we have a 24-hour comment line, 425-270-5416. Okay, so Section 3 is the one that covers what we call bad behavior of public servants and how they become disqualified. So let's pay really close attention, because this right here is the footing for most all of our petitions in getting rid of public servants who are not protecting the Constitution and supporting it. So Biden, of course, is violating the Constitution in Section 3 here. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. What this basically says is anybody who violates the Constitution, anybody who fails to do what their duties are under the Constitution, means if they're not actually addressing the invasion, they are committing rebellion against the Constitution. I want to be clear on that. The Constitution's clear. They are required. They guarantee that each state should be, will be, and shall be protected from an invasion. All we need are attorney generals of all of these states that have illegals in them, invaders in them, and sue the federal government and basically demand that everybody in Congress, since Congress is incapable of following the Constitution, Congress must be dismissed and a new Congress chosen. That's simple. You want to create a constitutional crisis? There you go. Because the states would quickly, very quickly, send people up, and they would be told precisely by the attorney generals. Well, actually, I think the attorney generals would be very clear in letting everybody know that if you're going to send people, you better send people that are going to be supporting the Constitution. I cannot believe that we are being destroyed because people are deliberately failing to follow the Constitution that are in office. That is, you can't have a more direct rebellion against the Constitution when it says that the United States shall guarantee to each state in this union a republican form of government and shall protect each from an invasion. You can't tell me that that isn't rebellion against the Constitution by not protecting the states from this invasion, by allowing things to continue. And I don't understand why the Republicans, other than the fact that they are either idiots or they are a part of the problem as well. They're in cahoots with the Democrats. Folks, it's time to wake up. The Uniparty is destroying us, and the only party that you have a chance in actually moving this nation in the right direction, the problem is, and actually it's a simple problem, if you start getting involved in the Constitution Party, you can move it and change it to the way it needs to be, because right now it's a wide open party that as more people join and agree that the Constitution Party shouldn't be about agendas and it shouldn't be configured like all the other parties as a laissez-faire, that it should be the gold standard of parties, that it stands for and only stands for full compliance of the constitutions, period. Anyway. All right, I'm down off the horse. I'm off my soapbox. Bottom line, the Section 3 is probably one of the most powerful weapons we have in this Constitution. I just want you to know that. Okay, so Section 4, the validity of the public debt. I want you to understand this. The validity of the public debt of the United States authorized by law, including debts incurred for payments of pensions and bounties for services in suppressing insurrection or rebellion, shall not be questioned. But neither the United States nor any state shall assume or pay any debt or obligation incurred in aid of insurrection or rebellion against the United States, or any claim for the loss or emancipation of any slave, but all such debts, obligations, and claims shall be held illegal and void. So guess what they just did? They kind of created a problem because Britain was owed a lot of money. Go do the research on how much money. It was a lot because the southern states needed, because they were cash poor, and they needed money to be able to buy materials so that they could fund this war that they were being dragged into because they seceded. Now, again, they should have been dragged into this, and they should have been, basically hauled or keel hauled. That's a better word than hauling them over the barrel, but they should have keel hauled them as we look at, the execution of ending slavery in the Northern Hemisphere. Now, here's the problem. Because Britain was owed so much money, they were not going to let that debt go. And as a matter of fact, they felt that this was really a bad move on the United States by not allowing to pay this debt. So Britain came back and said, hey, look, if you don't pay us, we're going to come in and attack you and destroy you. And we don't think you have the wherewithal at this point in time to actually suppress us because you just went through this bloody battle and you're still trying to rebuild. You've probably depleted and everybody has just lost, They realized that we were in a situation that they could have taken advantage of. And there's no doubt in my mind that the table was set for these backdoor deals in creating these corporations, which in essence was a mechanism of bleeding money out of the United States to pay the crown. And I'm here to tell you that this was all done unconstitutionally. And as a matter of fact, right here in Section 4, that very specific thing in siphoning money out to England via these corporations directly violated this part of the Constitution, because it said that the United States shall assume or shall not assume any debt or obligation incurred in the aid of insurrections and rebellion against the United States, or any claim for the loss or emancipation of any slave, but all such debts, obligations, and claims shall be held illegal and void. Their hands were tied, which is why they chose to do backroom deals in creating this unconstitutional government and then getting all of the states on board with it. Folks, we are living in a time where our government is built upon a house of cards. And as we look and understand everything that they've done are all violations of the Constitution, and the states have the power. They don't even need a big breath. They just need a little puff. And it's all down. It's all gone. It blows it away. Now we just have to sweep up the cards and throw them into the trash. That simple. Okay, so Section 5 becomes the first time we actually see this, where it's actually taking a little bit of a different approach. However, this in itself is not an amendment granting them the actual ability to execute. Congress shall have the power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article. In other words, they can create the laws that then they can go to the militia to enforce. You have to understand that they did not have the power, and Congress still has not granted, or the states in an amendment have not granted the ability of the federal government to execute their own laws. That's the term in Article 1, Section 8, subsection 15, to execute the laws of the Union. And until there's an amendment that actually states that, and we're going through these, until we see that amendment, they can't even create an enforcement agency like they have with the IRS, the BLM, FBI, so forth and so on and so on. And so, anyway, what we've got is, I got about a minute left. So what I'm going to do, because we have this little backstory, I'm going to give you the heads up on this, or I should say the little bit of information regarding Kurt Lash. So this was a paper that he did. It was legal studies, and this was in 2009. And this was a very comprehensive 3-part study. And if I remember correctly, it was thousands of pages that this three-part essay that he wrote regarding the 14th Amendment and the Bill of Rights. And as a matter of fact, the name of it was The Origins of the Privileges or Immunity Clause, Part 1, and this is Part 1, of his paper, his thesis. And so this was for the Loyola Law School of Los Angeles. And again, the subtitle was Privileges and Immunities as an Antebellum Term of Art. This was done by Professor Kurt T. Lash. And so we're going to actually read through some excerpts, and actually these aren't even excerpts. We're going to read through the beginning of his Part 3 regarding the ratification of the 14th Amendment when we come back in our next episode. You're going to love this. I'm G.R. Mobley. We're reclaiming the Republic, and we need your help. God bless. Reclaiming the Republic is more than an educational radio show. My intent is to also work with you and local leadership to promote matters of the Constitution and self-governance. This way we can all promote constitutional awareness within our communities and with our elected officials and public leaders. If you love liberty and sovereignty and recognize the federal tyranny that is threatening our lives, then we are asking for your help. And here are a few ways you can help. Spread the word about this radio show, Reclaiming the Republic. It is the only radio show in the world asserting a constitutional solution to federal overreach. Download and share our podcast and content. Read, like, follow, and share our Mobius Strip Press and Reclaiming the Republic pages on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at Mobius Strip News. Get informed about local groups in the area and get involved. Most importantly, become a constitutional warrior with your local leaders and demand that they begin applying constitutional tests to what they are doing and who they are supporting. Thank you.
Hello and welcome everyone to Freedom Not Tyranny. I'm your host, David Torres. This is a show about you, about your rights, your freedom. A different show. A show about big government versus little government. A show about your Second Amendment rights. A show about your freedom, your rights to vote. A show that involves how to keep yourself independent. Your rights to do what you feel is necessary for you and your family. This is what this show is all about. I hope you enjoy it. Freedom, not tyranny.